The president recently praised a group of Coast Guard rescue swimmers. One of them reportedly faces termination because he isn't vaccinated. I'm curious, given the threats that we're facing abroad, would the president ever reconsider that vaccination requirement or consider issuing more exemptions?
So, as you can imagine, the president has the deepest respect for the U.S. Coast Guard.
Flip those pages.
That is something that
Flip those
you
pages.
hear from him directly, and the president and the country are grateful for all of the U.S. Coast Guard heroes that have led the effort to save lives in Florida. We have seen that with our very own eyes these past couple of days.
If this were a deposition and I were the lawyer and she were the witness, I would ask her to stop right now and say, ma'am, what question did I just ask you? Or, ma'am, what question are you answering right now? Do you recall the question I asked you? Can you please repeat the question I just asked you? Let's refresh everybody's memory.
The president recently praised a group of Coast Guard rescue swimmers. One of them reportedly faces termination because he isn't vaccinated.
The president recently complimented Coast Guard rescue people. One of the people that he complimented says he faces termination because of his medical status, not being vaccinated with a vaccine that we now know has been referred to as a therapeutic by one Dr. Kieran Moore. We know, by all accounts, does not prevent contracting, carrying, or transmitting the virus. Allegedly, purportedly reduces severity of symptoms. We know all of that now. This man, apparently, by his account from this question, stands to lose his job at the hands of a policy of a man who just complimented his heroism. Can you comment on that, Press Secretary Jean-Pierre?
I'm curious, given the threats that we're facing abroad, would the president ever reconsider that vaccination requirement or consider issuing more exemptions?
So, as you can imagine, the president has the deepest respect for the U.S. Coast Guard. That is something that you would hear from him directly, and the president and the country are grateful for all of the U.S. Coast Guard heroes that have led the effort to save lives in Florida. We have seen that with our very own eyes these past couple of days.
With our eyes.
I would refer you specifically to the U.S. Coast Guard on this issue.
I don't want to answer the question.
Questions. It's not something that I would comment from here, but there, of course, have been multiple vaccination requirements, as you know,
there have been
place
multiple
for quite some time. But again, I'm not going to comment from here on an individual case.
Verbal diarrhea. That was nearly 2 minutes. No, that was not nearly 2 minutes. It felt like 2 minutes. That was 1 minute and 6 seconds, maybe say 45 seconds of pure verbal diarrhea. And I've got to say, what the hell is she doing? Flipping pages as though there's going to be some miracle answer in her documents as this man is asking the question. And then she never what's she flipping?
The president recently praised a group of Coast Guard rescue swimmers. One of them reportedly
looking up, uncomfortable.
Faces
Let me start flipping
because
pages.
He isn't vaccinated. I'm curious.
We just start
given
flipping
the threats
pages.
that we're facing abroad,
there you go. Flip it.
president
My
ever
answer's going to be
reconsider?
there. Oh my goodness, people. Oh my goodness. And do you know how much Press Secretary Jean-Pierre gets paid? You guessed it. 180,000 United States dollars per year. To do that as a job, to not answer questions, to the president has said a bunch of generic things. Let me flip through my pages. And I don't want to answer that question. Go ask the Coast Guard. Go ask the guy. And the fact checkers, the fake news fact checkers. I'm actually going with a new term now. Wordsmiths of the devil. That's what I'm saying the fact checkers are. They're no longer fact checkers. I don't know if they ever were. They're not just liars, because at least a liar, it would be very easy to show the lie. They are wordsmiths of the devil. Pick on little words, twist the meanings of things to get the truth that you want. And then it makes it ever so difficult to disprove, because it's not an overt lie. You actually have to read, you have to know facts to know why it is The so-called fact checkers are lying to you through their teeth, through your teeth. Good morning, everybody. Sorry for the odd hour for the stream today. It's Thursday. I got something at 2, had something at 10. I was on RT this morning, and it seems that the discussion was, well, it was supposed to be more focused on Hurricane Ian, Hurricane Fiona, how the government, the federal government can find billions, and I mean billions of dollars, to finance foreign conflict, but then has to scratch the bottom of the bucket to provide immediate, dire financial resources to people who have been impacted in Florida by Hurricane Ian and on the east coast of Canada by Hurricane Fiona. But it sounded like there might have been a confusion, and the questions were along a different line that I was... I like challenges, and I like having to think on my feet. But I had done all my homework on stuff that I then knew, which weren't necessarily the questions that were asked. So it was fun and interesting. Thus is the risks and perils of live interviews in all their glory. So that's what I did at 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, something else. So it's going to be 11 until however long this goes. And we've got some stuff to talk about today. Nick Rekieta nuked from YouTube. I call them fake checkers. I call them FUCT checkers. That's the French United Connection Kingdom. No, what was it? It was FCUT, not French Connection United Kingdom. That's what it was. So on the menu today, we're going to get to the fake fact checkers just to kick things off before we head over to Rumble. And now people are starting to appreciate A, the importance of Rumble, and B, the importance of clear terms of service community guidelines. Barnes and I drafted and crafted the terms of service community guidelines, whatever we want to call them, for Rumble. Some people don't like them because they say, oh, well, it still sounds like some speech might be prohibited. Yeah, except it's going to be clear what speech is going to be prohibited, and it's going to be clear how the rules are going to be implemented in a non-partisan, non-viewpoint-based manner. And it's going to be subject to the scrutiny of a community with the final say on the platform itself as to, did we make a mistake here? It's not going to be willy-nilly, capricious, arbitrary, murky, is the word, what is the word I'm looking for? Opaque. Opaque terms of service, community guidelines that can apply to anybody and anybody at any given point in time, depending on how we want to interpret the words, but seems to be applied with a strong viewpoint bias. Oddly enough, something that seems to be remedied by new legislation in Texas, and the discussion is going to be, does this open the potential for a lawsuit in the state of Texas if what YouTube did to Rekieta is deemed to be viewpoint discrimination? But hold on. Standard disclaimers. No legal advice, no medical advice, no election fortification advice. Super chats, YouTube takes 30%, but that will only be a warning for the first half hour of the stream before we migrate over to Rumble. Not so that I can do things that I can't do on YouTube, so that I can reward the platform that is walking the walk and talking the talk literally. This is as bad as the Veep and Kamala mashup. Have you seen it? I haven't seen that, but we're going to get into some of the fact check stuff. So we're going to move this over to Rumble, let's say in about 21 minutes, give or take. On the menu, fake news fact checkers, wordsmiths of the devil. Canada, conspiracy theory of yesterday, confirmed fact of today. French Connection was a long time ago. It was the one that said FUCT, fucked. That went to the Supreme Court. That was the recent one. But what did that stand for? The fucked, it was a brand. I'm not swearing for the sake of it, people. I like you rewarding the platform reasoning. Thank you, political foolishness. What did FUCT stand for? It stood for Friends Under... Chat, who's going to get this first? FUCT was the brand that went to the Supreme Court. Their trademark was rejected because it was lascivious or whatever. It was... friends you can trust. No, friends you can't trust. That was the most recent one that went to the Supreme Court about a couple of years ago. Friends you can't trust. Good. Well, we tied that, but I think you might have gotten it first, Rutherford, because I'm on the StreamYard's comments and it's delayed. But we're going to go over Nick's situation. It's, we're going to go over it. I've queued up Nick's stream on Rumble where he explains the situation. So we'll look it over and see, whether or not anyone. I'm sure there are a ton of people who think this is justified. The question is going to be: is it arbitrary? Is it justified? Is it double jeopardy or triple jeopardy? Nick is on Crowder. That'll bring some attention to it. So anyways, we're going to go with fake news, wordsmiths of the devil, because, oh my goodness, the pieces that they just put out for Kamala Harris talking about equity in the funds to be dispersed, for disaster relief. Ooh, they got to fact check that. Wordsmiths of the devil. What was the other fact check? Fetterman releasing 1/3 of dangerous criminals, according to Mehmet Oz ad, fact checked. And you can see the wordsmithing of the devil, depending on the narrative that wants to be promoted. It can be, the answer could just as easily be yes or no with the exact same reasoning, just placing the emphasis on a different syllable. And then we're going to go to Canada. Confirmed now this, what is it? Known digital identity traveler. It's known digital identity traveler. Some platform. Sounds like ArriveCan, but it sounds like ArriveCan on steroids. Let me just see if, hold on just one second. I've never got a call. Give me 2 minutes, people. Nothing dire, just unexpected stuff. Hold on, please. Okay, people, we might be getting various interruptions. I might have a sick kid at school that I might have to go pick up. So we're gonna see about that. While I wait for a call, so bear with me and forgive me because this might interfere a little bit with the stream. Where was I? And it might distract me. So the kid, I've got a kid. I might have to go pick up a sick kid. We'll see what happens. But before we get another call, let's just put this on pause and let's go. StreamYard is now calling it present. Let's go present. What Kamala Harris said and how these wordsmiths of the devil fact checkers fact check things. This was making the rounds. It comes from RNC research, so you might want to, view this video with the requisite skepticism because it's a partisan by definition account tweeting it. But let's just hear this. The
families in Florida, in Puerto Rico, with Fiona, and what we need to do to help them in terms of an immediate response and aid, but also what we need to do to help restore communities and build communities back up in a way that they can be resilient, not to mention adapt to these extreme weather conditions, which are part of the future. On the point that you made about disparities, when I was district attorney of San Francisco, I was elected in 2003. I started one of the first environmental justice units of any DA's office in the country focused on this issue. And in particular on
environmental justice. She created it.
The disparities, as you have described rightly, which is that it is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted by these extreme conditions and impacted by issues that are not of their own making. And so absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place.
Resources based on equity. Resources based on equity. Let's just refresh this and see what the RNC had to say about it. Resources based on equity, environmental justice. What does that mean? Kamala Harris suggests hurricane and disaster relief should be based on race. Okay. All right. Scary. That's the claim. That's the video. What does the fact check say? What do the wordsmiths of the devil do? That's so good. That's so good. I don't know. I can't put it on a shirt because nobody's going to want to wear a shirt that says wordsmith of the devil. What does the fact checker say about this? Let me go to the fact checker. That's the Mehmet Oz fact check. That's not the where's the the fact check said no, she didn't say it. I need to bring up the fact check. Why don't I have that in my oh, son of a nerds. I'm going to have to pull this up. I have the video from the link. Is it this one? Ugh, for goodness sake. Give me 2 seconds. I'm going to have to go find this. The fact check said no. Kamala Harris didn't say that. Kamala Harris, here we go. Hurricane fact check. No, she didn't say that, you idiots. Who are you going to believe? Me or your lying ears? No, they always start off that way. Kamala Harris said about Hurricane Ian that if you have a different skin color, you're going to get relief faster. I think we can all agree that that was not intended at any point. If Rick Scott said that verbatim, that was not intended to be a verbatim quote from Kamala Harris. The question is, did she effectively say that in the policy that she specifically touted as being relief based on equity? Equity being the politically correct term for different race, gender, lower income, as she said in the interview. Let's just say, no, Kamala Harris didn't say Hurricane Ian would be based on skin color. Okay. Harris did not say any particular race would be prioritized in relief efforts. She said it would be based on equity. and then did specifically mention women when the announcer asked her about women and other ethnicities. She didn't say no particular race would be prioritized, but it certainly sounded like arguably a specific race would be deprioritized. The White House said in her comments about equity, referring to long-term bipartisan investment in underserved communities, not in immediate hurricane relief. That sounds like wordsmithing. Oh, she's not talking about Hurricane Ian right now specifically. They're just talking about equity. The White House said her comments about equity were referring to long-term. Oh, not short-term. Don't worry. It's not going to be based on race because it's long-term, not short-term. Bipartisan. Oh, okay. So both parties get behind this arguable discrimination. Investments in underserved communities. By the way, they go to, let's just see here. After Hurricane Ian made landfall, she's giving this interview. She's making these statements in the wake of the hurricane. She does an interview. She was speaking with actress Priyanka Chopra Jonas on September 30th before the DNC. That's my wife. Hold on one second, people. Hold on. All right, I'm back. You know what the biggest curse for OCD hypochondriac is? Everything is an immediate panic with me, and I know this. I have to get this under control. And yeah, so that's it. Now she's talking to mom, so we might be able to do this a little more smoothly. That's the article. But you've had time to read this. I'm going to unpack that question. Harris responded with a laugh. Okay. The statement is that relief is going to be based on race or gender or equity, whatever that means. But we heard the statement. They link to the interview, but I'm just going to play it one more time, actually, from the interview itself, because the before and the after are relevant. And I know that I at least have the interview on YouTube. Here, listen to this. This is the point at which it becomes relevant.
The crisis is real and the clock is ticking. And
Panic, people,
The
everybody.
urgency with
Panic.
which we must act is without any question. And the way that we think of it and the way I think of it is both in terms of the human toll. And I know we are all thinking about the families in Florida, in Puerto Rico, with Fiona, and what we need to do to help them in terms of an immediate response and aid.
Context is typically relevant, especially when it undermines the conclusion. Oh, she wasn't talking about Hurricane Fiona or Hurricane Ian. She was talking long-term bipartisan relief based on equity. Well, that's the context leading up to the statements.
But also what we need to do to help restore communities and build communities back up in a way that they can be resilient, not to mention adapt to these extreme weather conditions, which are part of the future. On the point that you made about disparities,
Disparity.
When I
Here we
was
go.
back when I was district attorney of San Francisco.
And now we get into the
I was
statements.
elected in 2003. I started one of the first environmental justice units of any DA's office in the country focused on this issue, and in particular on the disparities, as you have described rightly, which is that it is our lowest income communities and our communities of color that are most impacted
Race.
by these extreme conditions.
Listen to the announcer
and
or
impacted
the
by
shopper.
by issues that are not of their own making. And so
women.
And women.
absolutely. And so we have to address this in a way that is about giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same
Giving
place.
resources based
And if we
on
want
equity
people to be in an
in the context of what she just identified as women, people of color, low income. Some might say the association in there is itself almost as prejudiced as the policy itself, but
place, sometimes we have to take into account those disparities and do that work.
clap. Oh, that's the statement, people. In all its glorious context. What did she mean by it? Is it as bad as it sounds? Is it worse than it sounds? And what do we make of the fact checker? Please make this stupid stuff for it. Mortimer Duke. My dad's name is Mortimer. What do we make of the fact check in all of this? No, she didn't say that. What she basically meant was, oh, it's bipartisan. It's old news, dude. It's barely a week old. What's the date? And yeah, it's not a question of being old or new news. It's a question of fake fact checkers or fake fact. Period. Wordsmiths, all they do is work around this, what was actually said, in order to easily recontextualize it. In order to recontextualize it so that it can mean what they want it to mean as opposed to mean what it actually meant. And on that similar vein, Fetterman running against Mehmet Oz. You want to talk about twisting things I'll say not twisting, just reading into things so that you can make them say what you want them to say and not what you don't want them to say. What was the hit piece on, or the hit piece, the recent criticism of, I want to say, is it John Fetterman? John Fetterman. This is a tweet from Cernovich. Fetterman, the state's prison population could be reduced by 1/3. And if you think that Fetterman didn't say that, I've got the video receipts to show you coming up. Fact check. It's mostly false to claim that Fetterman wants to release 1/3 of prison. This is platform manipulation and voter suppression. They are flagging Fetterman on video saying to release 1/3. This is the fact check. This is a good montage, and I checked it up, and these are all legit screen grabs. Mehmet Oz, apparently in one of his online campaign ads, said, I couldn't find the original ad. I don't know if Oz took it down. Fetterman wants to release 1/3 of dangerous criminals back into our communities. Oz is saying, not quoting Fetterman as having said, I want to release 1/3 of dangerous criminals back into our communities. John Fetterman wants to release 1/3 of dangerous criminals back into our communities. What do the fact checkers say? Oh, look, in Pennsylvania Senate race, Mehmet Oz distorts John Fetterman's stance on releasing prison inmates. Fetterman has not called for releasing 1/3 of dangerous criminals. In 2020, he said he agreed with what he said was a comment by Pennsylvania's corrections secretary that state's prison population could be reduced by 1/3 without a risk to public safety. Fetterman said, we're actively trying to audit our population to identify those inmates that are most deserving, and does it make sense? I think there's one more page to this. In a virtual panel discussion, Fetterman stated, I was on a panel with Secretary Wetzel earlier before the pandemic hit, and he said something remarkable that I agree with. We could reduce our prison population by a third and not make anyone less safe. And that's a profound statement. In July, he tweeted, we could reduce our state prison population by 1/3, make us no less safe, save $1 billion a year. In April 2020, Penn Live reported Fetterman said that he could cut inmate population by 1/3 by releasing nonviolent offenders and convicts. Shall we get a little montage? It's by the RNC again. A little montage of what Fetterman actually said. We're going to hinge on the word dangerous, everybody. He said he could reduce the population by 1/3, but he didn't say anything about releasing dangerous criminals. And so instead of it being mostly true, mostly true, he said he wants to reduce the population by 1/3. It's mostly false because he never said dangerous. He just said, I guess convicts would be the right word. Yeah, let's see another montage by the GOP. This, you'll notice why this is partisan. In style, in form, and whether or not there's context, the context that we can always give. He's not talking about dangerous criminals. He's just talking about convicted criminals. Reduce it by 1/3.
He said something remarkable that I agree with.
This is the one quote.
We could reduce our prison population by a third.
Throw in scary music for full effect.
And not make anyone less safe. If we could reduce our prison population, we could return these individuals back to their families, back to their communities, and everyone is safer or better off, and the outcomes are more just. Why wouldn't we want to do that? I was on a panel with our director of corrections, and he said something that I've
got to use. I suspect there are more flattering images out there. They've got to use this one.
Agree with, and is that we could release 1/3 of our inmate population and not make anyone less safe.
So there's the interesting issue with all of that. I think a great many of us would agree on releasing nonviolent petty drug offenders. I think most of us would agree with that. I certainly agree with releasing nonviolent, low-level marijuana possession criminals from jail. Whether or not what he has in his mind is reducing the population of the prison population, not I don't know if he means jail or prison versus in terms of severity of crimes. If he means reducing it by 1/3 as a number to get to, regardless of the infractions, that's a policy issue. If he means release low-level, nonviolent, petty drug offenders, that's another issue. That's a policy issue. The inability to describe that in a way that is more nuanced than saying we can reduce the population of the prison by 1/3, multiple times say it over and over again, and then he has to have the fact checkers come in and say, "You never said dangerous criminals. You just said criminals." He never said it's mostly false. He never said dangerous criminals. He just said reduce the population of by 1/3 criminals. Oh, let's see here. Hold on one second. 13% of federal prison population is on cannabis crimes. That's a lot. I think we all agree with that, by the way. The other thing is 1/3 of the prison population to be released without it making anybody less safe. It's nice to repeat a talking point. I'd like to see the homework behind that. We could all agree on the basic policy, nonviolent, especially now that it's been decriminalized. I know it can't be done federally, but nonviolent, petty possession of marijuana, we could all agree on. As a hard and fast rule to say, as a policy, reduce the prison population by 1/3. Yeah, take issue with the dangerous qualification in there, and not the policy as in and of itself. Okay, we're 35 minutes in. Let me before we go this, I'm just going to text my wife. All right, mom with the vehicle is on it, but if I have to cut this short, we might have to. Kamala also said we are proud partners with North Korea, and notice the smug attitude she had while saying it. Shameless, utterly shameless. Anyhow, so even nonviolent hard drug offenses. Agreed. We can read your lips. Don't worry. I talk as though I would accidentally have forgotten to put it on mute in the first place. I'm transparent to a flaw. So that's the fake news aspect of all of this. I don't know when. Like, has PolitiFact always been this bad, and I just never knew it, or have they gotten progressively worse and worse as the world has become hyper partisan, hyper politicized, hyper tribalistic, politically speaking? But I felt we had to just, go over those. Fetterman said it repeatedly. Whether or not you think it's a good or bad policy, whether or not you understood him to say, we're not going to release dangerous criminals, but we're going to reduce the prison population by 1/3. And whether or not the mere fact that he can't elucidate, no, that's not the right word, but that he cannot phrase a policy in a manner that's coherent, is in and of itself a problem. Whether or not Mehmet Oz is any better, that would be one of those. That would be one of those personal decisions. That's none of my business. Okay, let me just see something here. I think we're going to move it on over to, because we're moving on up. Yeah, we want to talk about Rekieta. The ban heard round the interwebs. People, here's the link to Rumble. And we're gonna flesh this out. Rekieta. I know him. I like him. I think I know him personally, although we've never met. Have we met in person? We've never met in person. Is Eric Hunley here? If Eric Hunley's here, maybe I'll flip him the link and we can get him in. Nuked overnight. I'm sure he got a very nebulous reason, if he got a reason at all. Everyone's trying to hustle and, take credit for it. We're going to talk about it now. Okay, go on over to Rumble, and hopefully, let me see what I have left on the menu here. Oh, and then we're going to talk about the WEF stuff. Not because we couldn't talk about it on YouTube. I'm posting my streams to YouTube the day later. I think the worst that has happened thus far is one got demonetized, which I really don't care about. But someone called me a milquetoast fence sitter. I don't push the envelope of rhetoric. I don't push the envelope of language or humor. It might make me a little more boring, but it's what I feel comfortable doing. I swore on Twitter the other day, and I felt bad about it for a couple of days later because I'm an idiot. I am an idiot. Okay, Rekieta was on crowd. Okay, very cool. Let us all mosey on over, people, to the Rumbles and talk about Nick's nuking from the platform of YouTube. I don't know if there's been any news as of the last hour or so, but we are ending it on Rumble. We are ending it on YouTube in 3, 2, 1.